Well, hello everybody. I'm John Feldt, and this is the weekly water outlook for the Midwest. Well, last week I mentioned we were having a weak impulse push through parts of the Midwest. Didn't look all that impressive, and it did result in a number of rain days over the upper Midwest, and that's really been the only spot that received any rain of significance. You can see here that there were about 3 to 4 days of rain in the last 7 days, ending the 27th, over the northern part of the Midwest, including parts of North Dakota and South Dakota. But everywhere else is brown, and that's showing that we're continuing this trend of little rain days. And some of that is climatologically based because it is a quiet time of the year. But even so, this is below normal, and I'll be talking about that in just a moment. So for the past 7 days, the observed rainfall, you can see that the area that was most significant was in Nebraska and then up towards the north. Nebraska had, in that area of yellow, about 2 inches of rain right in the central part of the state. But really, if you look further off to the east, sort of a dividing line here, anywhere east of this area, it's really very quiet, very limited amounts of rainfall. Actually, no rainfall whatsoever over Ohio. And then this line that came through Missouri, it had some promise to produce maybe a ½ inch of rain, but look how scattered that is. It really didn't do all that much. So, not really too much significant rain last week across the Midwest, other than that very isolated area. So if we look at the past 7 days, percent of normal, lots of red, and that deep red there over Ohio, parts of Indiana, that's 0% of normal. But still, the majority of the Midwest, especially the central and eastern Midwest, below normal rainfall. You can see around St. Louis just some pockets of above normal and below normal. Very, very scattered. So really the most significant signal last week for rainfall, small parts of Nebraska and then parts of North Dakota and South Dakota. I wanted to step back, and I keep on talking about how the drought started over parts of Iowa and northern Missouri and it's expanded to the east and then to the north. And you can look at the past 60 days, percent of normal rainfall. And if you look at the areas in yellow and orange and red, we're seeing significantly below normal rainfall now across a pretty large part of the Midwest. Better conditions over the western parts of the Dakotas. But for the most part, you can see the outline of the significant deficits of rainfall. Now remember, it started right in here, generally speaking, and it's developed both to the east, across Illinois into Indiana, and even recently into Ohio, and then up to the north. So it's definitely been a summertime progression of drought. And you can see it in the drought monitor. If you look closely, on the left is July 16th, and on the right is the latest. And you can see how the drought has expanded. Look at this. This is in the early part of July. No drought at all being reported anywhere in here. But look how it's expanded to the most recent one. And if you've been listening to my briefings, I was talking about these rainfall anomalies, negative anomalies, earlier in July and even in June. And it took a while for the drought monitor to reflect that and actually see the impact. And now we are seeing that impact as we get into very close to fall, the impact spreading off to the east. Real quickly, a couple accumulated rainfall graphics. This is the normal. The brown's the normal rainfall. Starts January 1st to the current date. This is Des Moines. I wanted to take a dry location. And you can see coming out of, we started in January 1st, sort of sets it at 0. Ran close to normal. Actually became a surplus in spring. And then as we got into summer, it just abruptly stopped. And we've increased the deficits all the way through the latest time. So you can sort of see that progression. I wanted to get over to the east where it was a lot better through much of the summer. We started off, here's Indianapolis, surpluses through the winter months. We got into spring, significant surpluses, and that's really helped agriculture into the spring, into early summer, and then right through the summer. But then look at this. This line starts to come close to normal, so we started drying out, and then more recently, more significant. Now we're looking at this average, long-term average, still close to normal over since January 1st, year to date. But look at the way this is going. So it's even drying out over eastern parts of the area. So the current steering winds right now, pretty much somewhat of a similar pattern I've been talking about the last month. This is a typical September pattern. We're getting some amplification of the upper jet stream, but it's well to the north. The energy staying to the north, and there's not a whole lot of moisture, and the systems are pretty weak. Thus, nothing all that impressive to talk about, and precipitation is fairly scattered. Now, sometimes we get tropical activity, which brings a lot of moisture into the area. It's not going to be this year. It's very quiet. It's been quiet all season long, and right now there's nothing out there really worth mentioning. So the jet stream analysis looks very similar this week to last week, starting off with the jet stream up to the north, and then we're going to have one system coming through, sort of a modest system. It came up to the northeast last week. This week it's a little bit more easterly, and you might think that we get some significant rain out of this coming from this direction, the southwest, but not much moisture, and it's going to weaken as it moves off to the east. Consequently, the rain's not going to be all that significant. I wanted to look out a little bit further, 6 to 10 days out. Pretty much normal type jet stream for late September into early October. Quiet pattern, harvest time, lots of blue skies, drier air, and with the jet stream up to the north like this, I think that looks pretty typical. So the rain forecast the next 7 days here, the rainfall again over the parts of the upper Midwest, that's associated with that system ejecting out of the southwest. Now, I find it interesting, models have been over forecasting rain with these systems, so I think that's going to be the case again. So it's fairly modest, and then as it moves off to the east, it begins to diminish. Generally speaking, I think we're lucky if we get a half inch out of this rain as it moves to the east. So I would say this is modest rain. It's not going to do much to alleviate the dry conditions, and it's probably going to be less than forecast if the models have been right. Now, week 2, this gets through the period into the first part of October, the 6th to the 12th. Green means precipitation, and reds mean dry conditions. I would call this no significant strong signal one way or the other. Looks to me, week 2, getting into the middle part of October, generally looks like a quiet pattern. I don't see a whole lot of change. Now, some of you are new to my briefings, and you will notice as I go throughout the year, I definitely talk about different things. And I'm going to be introducing some teleconnections again very soon. And I'll explain them as I go through. This is one I use a lot. It's the Arctic oscillation. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it now other than say it's either positive when it's to the above this line, or it's negative when this plot is below this line. And this is showing the potential for disturbances in atmospheric pressure imbalances, which result in more significant precipitation and changes in temperature. And right now, looking at the red lines, which are the model, red lines are generally clustered close to this line, and that's saying that we're most likely to have more of a neutral Arctic oscillation as we get into October. If fall kicks in with more vigorous activity, I think what we would see is more either above normal or below normal, saying that we're starting to get into late fall where systems will get more active. So that's just a hint of what's to come. I'll be talking about that throughout the late fall into the winter. But right now I don't see anything that shows that we're going to get into really the strong part of late fall or winter. It looks like your typical quiet fall. So the takeaway points, one system late this week, modest precipitation at best. Week 2, about the same, dry. There could be some precipitation, but it should be on the light side. And generally quiet fall weather. Thank you for listening to this week's briefing. I will be updating it again in a week. Enjoy the nice fall weather.